radio and on... It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. I'm Leo Kearse, standing in for the big man who's off sunning himself, opening up his chakras and having a great time. In my big opinion, Donald Trump indicted again, but this witch hunt will do nothing but help him. In the big story, Costa caused a stir this week after posting an ad showing a cartoon of a trans man with mastectomy scars, leading many to boycott the coffee chain. When will this madness end? And in my take at 10, pop star Lizzo is in hot water over allegations of fat shaming. But with obesity on the rise and crippling the NHS, is it time to bring back the practice of calling out bad life choices at the donut counter? So a busy 2 hours to come, so put something cold and fizzy in the fridge or fire up the kettle, or, because we're doing things differently tonight, put something cold and fizzy in the kettle and let's make a night of it. First, the headlines with Rory Smith.
Thank you very much, Leo. Storm Anthony saw 78 miles-per-hour winds hit some parts of the UK today, blocking 100 miles of railway between Exeter and Penzance. About half a month's worth of rain fell in some areas, with a number of people having been evacuated from their homes in North Yorkshire due to flooding. The southwest had severe road and rail disruption. Well, a yellow weather warning remains in place until 10 o'clock tonight for the southeast of England and East Anglia. Weather journalist Nathan Rao explains the conditions.
The wind speeds of this storm, Storm Anthony, are expected to be around 75 mile-per-hour gusts on the coasts and 55 mile-per-hour inland. It's not the strongest storm that we've seen, but because of the time of year, the trees are all in full leaf and it's holiday season, the schools are off, and where it's going to be hitting, the impact of this storm hitting today is likely to be greater than had the same sort of thing happened later in the year.
2 French police officers have been injured in clashes with migrants near Calais. Around 60 people threw rocks and other missiles as officers tried to stop people smugglers launching a small boat. Well, GBNews can reveal that 15,100 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats since the start of the year. That's down more than 2,500 on the same period last year. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party is calling for peaceful protests after a court sentenced him to 3 years in prison for illegally selling state gifts. Well, this evening, several of his supporters were arrested by police during a protest. Mr Khan was convicted of misusing his 2018 to 2022 premiership to buy and sell items in state possessions. He has always denied any wrongdoing. Prosecutors in the US have asked a judge to limit what Donald Trump can say publicly about a criminal case against him. They warn that Mr Trump may be seeking to use evidence to target witnesses after he posted a message to social media that said, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." The former US president says he's being targeted for political reasons. Members of the rock band The Kinks are paying tribute to their former keyboardist, John Gosling, who's died at the age of 75. Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night. Brothers Sir Ray and Dave Davis formed the band in the 1960s before Gosling joined in the 70s. The Kinks scored 3 #1 singles in the UK, including the iconic track, which you can hear now, "You Really Got Me." This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car and digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now though, it's back to Leo.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight with me, Leo Kearse. In my big opinion, Donald Trump in court again. But will these relentless indictments do anything other than help him become president again? In the big story, Costa Coffee causes stir by using a promotional image of a trans man with double mastectomy scars to promote themselves. Why are big corporations so intent on pushing this agenda onto us? We just want our cappuccinos. And the legendary Edinburgh Fringe Festival kicks off this weekend. I'm joined by one of the funny men up there to discuss whether the woke agenda is killing comedy. In my Take at 10, big-boned pop star Lizzo is facing pressure following allegations of fat-shaming by her dancers. But is it time to bring back the practice of fat-shaming to tackle the escalating obesity crisis? Our sparkly friend of the show, Kinsey Schofield, joins us from Los Angeles for all your latest royal, US and showbiz news. GBNews is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30 p.m, so stay tuned for that, with our three top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Today we have legendary radio DJ and broadcaster Mike Reid, broadcaster and former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Culver Ranger, and congratulations to him on recently getting that promotion to the House of Lords, and former Home Office advisor and political commentator Claire Pearsall. And tonight I'll be asking the pundits, how do we tackle people smuggling gangs brazenly offering to help criminals escape back across the channel from the UK? And is it time to bring back the ban on kids in pubs? And with more ADHD sufferers turning to marijuana to manage their symptoms, is it time to legalise cannabis? Plus, your emails, even the spicy ones, send them in to gbviews@gbnews.com. This show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Anyway, let's get to work. And we start with my big opinion. Donald Trump was indicted this week in what feels like the 5 millionth attempt by the establishment to bring him down. Is Trump actually guilty, or is an autocratic establishment attempting to imprison a political dissident, as we've seen with Alexei Navalny and Nelson Mandela? Of course, I'm not saying Trump is like Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela openly advocated for terrorism. He didn't just send a couple of vaguely worded tweets. The list of accusations against Trump is as high as Hunter Biden at 4 a.m. after a night on the crack pipe, accepting overseas money, collusion with Russia, sexual misconduct, defamation, falsifying business records, paying Stormy Daniels, tax fraud, obstruction of justice, mishandling classified files, associating with white supremacists, election interference, and fomenting a violent insurrection. I'm surprised they haven't also charged him with non-payment of his TV licence and running in the corridor. Is it fair? While I don't think that Trump should run for president, it feels like he is being penalised for things that Democrat leaders get away with. Biden had classified documents in his garage. Hillary used a secret server for classified emails. Bill Clinton paid off a woman for sexual harassment, giving Paula Jones $850,000. Although true to his reputation as a deal-maker, Trump paid a much better-looking woman, Stormy Daniels, only $130,000. Maybe Bill Clinton should have read The Art of the Deal before taking his trousers off. And Trump is accused of not accepting the election results. Well, I seem to remember in 2016, Hillary didn't accept Trump's victory, and in fact, everyone on the left spent the next 4 years proudly protesting that Trump wasn't their president. Biden described Trump as an illegitimate president, and in 2020, Hillary even told Biden not to concede the election under any circumstances. And let's face it, every president clings onto the curtains and has to be taken out of the White House like Al Pacino at the end of Scarface, although only a Biden White House would have that plate of cocaine for Hunter. The January 6th Capitol riots hang over everything as Trump's nastiest moment. We're told that they were a serious attempt at a violent insurrection. But come on, I've been on stag do's more violent than that. There were little old ladies waving flags and men in fancy dress. It's the only violent insurrection in history that politely stayed inside the velvet guide ropes. The idea that this ragtag bunch of fruitcakes armed with flags and horned helmets were a serious threat to the most militarily powerful nation on earth. Pull the other one. Insurrections need tanks, Apache helicopters, cruise missiles, all the stuff that the American government happens to have. In fact, if you do want to commit an insurrection, you generally need the US government on your side. Then you can topple any government you want, from Guatemala to Iraq. It's obvious that there's a two-tier criminal justice system in America. And with Trump about to be tried by a judge installed by Obama, it doesn't look like that's going to change. Interestingly, the charges Trump were indicted for this week don't include inciting the riot. They relate to his attempts to overturn the election results. Now, I don't defend Trump for this. He clung on far too long and embarrassed himself. But 2020 was a unique election with a lot of postal voting and electronic voting. And we've seen in Russia how this can allow vote rigging. And there was that suspicious jump in Biden's results after an early lead by Trump. So while I don't believe that the election was stolen in this way, I can definitely understand Trump making the most of the doubts. And look, I don't agree with Trump that the Democrats used electoral fraud to steal the election. And I don't want Trump as president. In his first term, he didn't start a single war. And I've got shares in weapons manufacturers. For the sake of my retirement plan, the USA needs to invade another country every 3 years. But in 2020, the Democrats colluded with the government agencies and the media establishment and big tech to bury the Hunter Biden laptop story, evidence of Joe Biden's son smoking crack with prostitutes, which could have swayed the election. Despite being true, it was classed as disinformation, and tweets about it and stories about it were silenced, including in the New York Post, one of the oldest newspapers in America. When we talk about elections being stolen and democracy being subverted, this is what we're talking about. The American people see it too, and they'll be the real jury for Trump and Biden.
You made it.
I made it. I'm here. All right, how you doing? Okay, so yeah, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? gbviews@gbnews.com. I'll get to your emails after the break. Reacting to my big opinion tonight are my brilliant pundits. Tonight we have legendary radio DJ and broadcaster Mike Reid, broadcaster and former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Culvier Ranger, and former Home Office advisor and political commentator Claire Pearsall. Coming up next in the big story, Oh, have a chat. If they don't write it down, I don't do it. I mean, what do you make of the Trump indictment? I mean, starting with you, Lord Culvier.
Well, look, as you quite rightly said, there's a long list of issues that are building up, but this particular one does focus on the issue of the pressure he appears to have been placing on various states, various officials, and there's been lots of interviews with his own people who felt quite uncomfortable about what was going on.
Yeah.
So although, as a populist figure, he is obviously being attacked, in this instance, there seems to be more of a case than there was before in a lot of these things that we see coming through. And unfortunately, it looks like there's a whole build of momentum as well. But what it does mean, that, as he's saying, he's going to come back stronger. So what I really fear for is the American people getting caught in the crossfire of Trump versus, anyone who's coming up against him.
Yeah, and it feels like the Democrats could actually be doing it deliberately because, I mean, Joe Biden knows that the only person he can beat is Trump. Trump, might get his own base energised, but he gets the Democrats energised even more. So, I mean, Claire, do you think the Democrats are actually playing this deliberately to ensure that Trump is the Republican candidate that they go up against?
I think you're right. I think that the Democrats will see Trump as their trump card, if you like, because he's going to do them so many favours with everybody looking at what's going on. Could he be in prison? How many documents he'd had? And then everything else that the Biden family are going through gets pushed under the carpet. So it goes away, it goes quiet, and you bury it under the Trump news. Now, of course, Donald Trump helps that enormously by going out there on Twitter, putting things out there saying he's going to come and get people. Well, that's also going to wind up the American public, and it's going to take over social media, and it's going to take over the election campaign as a whole.
And that post has already been taken as evidence as well, just hours after he made it. He's really working against himself.
He knows that. He knows it's going to have that result. He knows that he's going to get more headlines, more traction for his campaign. And you can see the sort of wheels behind it, the Republican campaign just going, brilliant, keep going, keep writing, because you're going to be out there and you're going to be leading the narrative.
Yeah. And Mike, I mean, what do you make of all this? Were you a fan of Trump back in 2016?
Not necessarily a fan. I'm always bemused by the fact that Biden and Trump are the two best American frontmen that the whole country can come up with. When there are so many people there that are sharp, and they are frontmen after all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seriously impressed that he can commit all these indiscretions whilst running and being president. It's extraordinary multitasking that he can do all these things at the same time. I mean, more charges than the Light Brigade, really. It kind of reminds me, going back 300 years to Jonathan Swift and Lemuel Gulliver, of Gulliver and Lilliput, where they're pegging him down. They've got this great Trump figure, and the Lilliputians are trying to peg him down. It has that feel to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and also, I mean, do you think, would you rather see Ron DeSantis as the Republican candidate? Because I mean, I feel like at the moment, you know, people are kind of desperate to get, even on the Democrat side, Joe Biden isn't popular. America's not sure if they're being governed by Joe Biden or being haunted by him.
Yeah.
So, you know,
he doesn't look well. Biden doesn't look a well man.
He doesn't look well, and he's losing. I mean, you get the feeling he's losing his mental faculties, and you know, he is 80 years old. I wouldn't want my dad's 80. I wouldn't want him running to the shops to get me a Mars
But they are
bar
under the
front.
microscope now, aren't they? With social media, more than any other presidential campaigns, these two are under the microscope. People are talking about them every day. I mean, it didn't happen years ago. And so many presidents, as we all know, have probably got away with so much over the years.
Well, exactly. I mean, Ronald Reagan, they switched his press appearances to mainly being on the steps of helicopters, where it's very difficult to ask a question. You've got this deafening engine going on. But yeah, I mean, would you rather see Ron DeSantis?
No, I really wouldn't. There's an honest answer for you. I listened to Ron DeSantis launching his campaign bid.
Yeah.
It was done over Twitter Spaces,
Yeah.
which is quite an unusual format to use, but quite clever at the same time. So you can see that they're putting a lot of thought into how best they can control this, how they can get the message out there. But no, I think his beliefs are not quite what the American public need, and certainly not what we need.
I think you're right, Claire. Was that that was where he was being interviewed by Elon Musk?
Yes. Yeah.
And it was innovative, but I think it showed the gap between where a president needs to be and where some of the candidates are. And there's such a gap between the two, between where they have Biden and Trump. These guys know how to play the game. The problem the American public have is they feel that they're right at the end of this, past the end of their political sell-by date.
Yeah.
And the others are still racing to catch up. They're all in their infancy. So they've got this huge lag between the up-and-coming and the two very elder statesmen, shall we say.
Yeah.
And they're quite insular, the Americans as well. I mean, they don't look at a global situation.
No.
They're not looking at the rest of the world. They're looking at America, and that's where Trump played to them.
Yeah, and he was a very protectionist, quite nationalist figure, you know, and even his rhetoric now around Ukraine, whereas other presidents would have said, you know, this is Western liberal democracy, these are our brothers, it's like World War II. He's very much not like that. He doesn't really care about what happens outside America's borders. OK, well, coming up next in the big story, Costa Coffee have caused outrage this week after posing a new ad campaign featuring an animated trans man with mastectomy scars. Why do big corporations insist on cancelling women? I'll see you in 3 minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's time now for the big story. Go Woke, Go Broke has seen its new victim, Costa Coffee. The coffee chain is facing boycott over its advert of a trans man. The image features a person who has had a double mastectomy, which is a breast removal surgery. The cartoon is on a Costa Express van, yet the company have refused to reveal where it's located. Joining me now is the journalist and writer Joe Bartosh. Joe, how are you?
Hello, hiya.
And Joe, should we be glorifying an irreversible surgery like this?
I'm really sorry. I'm afraid the sound cut out.
Oh, right, sorry. No, can you hear me now?
So I'm imagining that you're asking me something along the lines...
Yeah, you can probably guess where my questions are going. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so I'll just plough on then and hope it works. So I think what's really disturbing about this is that they are essentially celebrating a form of self-harm, and it's very hard to think of any other group that that this would be normalised for. It's really concerning. It's glamorising a serious mental illness. And it's something that we know is contagious as well. So if you look at the fact there's been a 5,000% increase in referrals to the gender identity services, the Tavistock Clinic over the past decade, clearly this is a massive issue with girls sort of hating their bodies. I mean, that's perfectly normal. Girls have always hated their bodies. It used to be it used to be cutting, then it was anorexia, and there've always been these sort of social contagions that revolve around girls hating their bodies. But to normalise something as serious as cutting off your breast, that's a serious mental illness, body dysmorphia. That's not, being inclusive of marginalised identity. That's celebrating self-harm.
And Joe, we're seeing an increasing number of people coming forward and regretting their transition. So young women who feel railroaded into the process. Sometimes they present to doctors and clinicians with gender dysphoria, but it's mixed up with autism, depression, various other mental illnesses, and they're told that they can only have access to the therapy if they take the path of transitioning, and if they're placed on puberty blockers, which are sold as something that just delays, that are reversible and just delay the onset of puberty, but quite often have long-term irreversible effects, and in some cases, stunt the genitalia, so there isn't enough material there to actually then properly transition. Are you worried about, this could be storing up problems for the future, and we could see this could be a medical crisis unfolding in front of our eyes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it will be, and it is, the biggest medical scandal of a generation. I think this will be looked back at in the same way as lobotomies and thalidomide and all of those other horrendous practices that we now have, moved away from. And I think, moreover, when you look at who owns Costa, it's actually owned by Coca-Cola. They're not exactly a fluffy multinational, are they? I mean, if you look at their record, I suspect their factory workers in their bottling plants don't have time to think about their gender identity. And I do think there's sort of an irony there.
I think corporations keep pushing this agenda. We've seen it backfire for Bud Light, which has lost hundreds of millions of dollars in sales, sent its share price into a tailspin. We've seen it with Target in America as well. In the UK, Wix received a lot of flack over their comments. I mean, why are corporations pushing this?
I mean, I think in part a lot of them have signed up to sort of ESG style schemes. So like the Stonewall scheme in the UK, where they get rated if they sort of hit various targets. I think that's a part of it. I think another part is it's just lazy virtue signalling. I think they know that they're going to get mobbed on social media if they don't sort of placate the trans nutters. So that's what they do.
So they're actually doing it because big investment companies such as BlackRock or Vanguard say that you have to hit these sort of woke investment points: ESG, environmental, social, and governmental. So you have to show that you're doing something positive for minorities, which in the end might not actually be that positive. And do you think this, so the companies are pushing this agenda to get access to that funding, but then do you think they're forgetting about what the actual customer base could actually care about and what their values could be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I wrote an article earlier this week looking at newspapers like The Sun that used to promote Page 3. And actually, I think there's kind of weirdly a lot of symmetry between that being normalised and normalising the removal of breasts as well. I mean, we now look back at, 16-year-old Samantha Fox and go, Jesus Christ, that was a bit wrong. And I think we will probably start looking at companies pushing this sort of nonsense with the same sort of horror in a few years' time.
Well, Jo, thanks so much for joining us tonight to talk about this issue. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you.
And coming up next with the pundits, with reports of people smugglers offering escape services for illegal migrants, how do we stop this madness? Plus, is it time to legalise marijuana? I'll see you in 2 minutes. Don't go away.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a wet, windy and unsettled day across the UK, and that's been due to Storm Anthony. That's going to move away to the southeast though as we go through this evening to allow for some lighter winds to move in from the west. But we could still see a bit more in the way of cloud, rain and some thunderstorms clinging into the southeast for a while. Also some blustery conditions here. Elsewhere, things drying up, though we could still see some showers for western coasts, and there will be some clear spells around, so in rural areas temperatures might just drop into the single figures. This will mean it'll be a generally brighter, drier and calmer start to the second half of the weekend, though still some blustery conditions, cloud and rain across East Anglia at first. Cloud and showers soon bubbling up elsewhere, and they could be heavy across Scotland, Northern England and a chance of a thunderstorm for Northern Ireland, but generally feeling much more pleasant with those temperatures just creeping into the low 20s in the south. After another chilly night though on Sunday, it will be a bright start to the new week with plenty of sunshine around. Some showers soon starting to bubble up, but these will be less frequent and lighter in nature than what we're expecting for Sunday. But as we look towards midweek, it does look like things will settle down and become a bit drier, with those temperatures on the rise too.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight. We've got some of your views sent in from John. We have Donald Trump is as guilty as anything on the 2024 election. Both Donald Trump and Joe Biden are yesterday's men who should not run again. Jim says, Costa must go out of business now. Harsh words from Jim there. I think he's got a card for Starbucks. Lynn says, it is a disgusting ad. Joking about the heartache of women who have breast cancer. Never mind the self-harm. When are these men going to be reckoned with? Talking about the Costa ad with the mastectomy scars there. And there's one from my wife saying, why can't you run faster? Anyway, back with me now, and joining me throughout the show are legendary radio DJ and broadcaster Mike Reid, broadcaster and former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Culveer Ranger, and former Home Office advisor and political commentator Claire Pearsall. It's profit season for people smugglers who have found a way to earn twice as much cash. Firstly, from bringing illegal migrants into the UK, and now by charging up to £17,500 to help them leave. Sounds like a lot of money, but when it's half-term, that could actually work out cheaper than a ferry. Smugglers are using TikTok to advertise bespoke escape services for criminals in Britain. Will this frightening behaviour finally make us confront the truth about the small boats crisis? So what do we know about gangs brazenly offering to help criminals escape from the UK? Claire, starting with you. I mean, what do you make of this?
In some respects, you can think, well, they're taking criminals out of the United Kingdom. We're not having to deport them, so therefore it does save the Home Office some money. But on the other hand, it just makes a mockery of the whole system that we have in place. And it's using the United Kingdom as some kind of criminal playground. And that can't be right. And the social media platforms themselves need to have some kind of hold over it if it's being broadcast across things like TikTok, then why aren't they taking that down? Because it's going to be quite obvious. You can do search words and all the rest of it. So those platforms should do it. But realistically, we need to stop organised crime gangs. It's not just going to be Albanians. This one's been highlighted at the moment. I think that so much more work needs to be done overseas with organised crime gangs if we're going to tackle this problem properly.
Yeah, I mean, Lord Kilvere, I mean, Claire raises an important point that that they're actually doing what the government should be doing and removing criminals from the UK. I mean, it seems to be working better than any Home Office
I was about to say, should we outsource to these guys because maybe they've got a model set up that we can... Yeah, no, look, joking aside, this is terrible. And look, we can always understand that there's always an underworld, right? Since the dawn of time, there have been people out there who can fix things. Yeah. Claire's absolutely right. How on earth is this being made available so easily on a social media platform? That's the first thing. You know, it wasn't like you could pick it up on the back of the Yellow Pages or in Loot before. You know, oh, you need to get out of the country quick, ring this number. But that's the way it's being made available. That's terrible. We need to look at that. Not just look at it, because the report says TikTok are looking to shut this down when they see these adverts. I'm sorry, I need the police involved here to go and find the people who are placing the adverts and actually closing these mechanisms, these channels down, shutting these organisations down, because it is a serious function that is undermining. They're escaping law and order in this country by leaving the country. That's what they're trying to do.
Some of them have committed serious crimes.
Serious crimes.
I mean, Mike, does this worry you that there's no, you know, they'll never face justice if they commit a crime here? We're talking about some of the criminals have committed murders, serious sexual assaults, and they're just fleeing the country and escaping justice.
Yeah, people don't know they're here, so they're unregistered. You can't find them. What are their names? They've got fake passports. Yeah, they're very adept at making fake passports, getting people in and out quickly. Social media should be more heavily policed than it is. I see some atrocious things on there. It should really be heavily policed. That's a major problem. And of course, immigrants, we talk about immigrants. There are two totally separate things here. People from war-torn countries that we take in and look after is one thing, but you mentioned immigrants and people actually sort of slag you off all the time, but this is different. It's illegal immigrants coming in on boats. All young men. We're spending billions on these hotels. Yeah. They've always got an internal army here.
Yeah, and the TikTok adverts for advertising the smuggling routes coming over the channel to Britain actually show the hotels. They say, look at this 4-star hotel. Look at this stately home. This is what the British taxpayer is going to be paying for you to live in.
And they complained about it. I know one lot said, oh, we want bigger televisions and the bathroom's not clean enough. And you think, wait a minute, they're getting him in and out. So it's almost a raid. They're almost like Viking raiders. They're coming over, doing the business, getting away with the money and getting boats back over.
Yeah, and they're doing it in small boats as well. Anyway, what could be more quintessentially British than a trip to the pub? Picture the scene, pint in one hand, packet of crisps in the other, and the piercing shrieks coming from kids at the table next to you. Pubs and restaurants used to be for adults only. No young kids allowed. The reality is that nobody goes to the pub to enjoy other people's children. Is it time to bring back the ban? Now, this is a story that...
Guilty. Look, I've got 2 children, almost 5 and a 3-year-old. It's been raining, if anyone's noticed, even though it's summer. We've been inside our local sports centre all day. They've been running around with other children, driving other people crazy, but other people with children as well. Yeah. So, yes, we look for environments where we know it's challenging. Our own children are challenging for us, let alone for other people. So you want to be in environments where people are accommodating that or are aware of that. It's not going to ruin their experience. Right. I think pubs are environments where people are going to get some peace and quiet, get away from things. A screaming toddler, an unhappy baby, you know, may be challenging in a pub environment. So I think it's up to the parents, really. I don't think we want to ban children. I think it's up to the parents to consider the environment around them. We're always thinking, let's go somewhere where there are other children that we can join in. Right. We have a nod and a wink to the parents next to us. We're all in the same boat, you know.
But Mike, I mean, I can see you nodding your head, but I disagree with this. I've got a child, so obviously my child can do no wrong and can make as much noise as she likes. But I mean, pubs are places where nobody goes to. It's not a library. Nobody goes to the pub to have a completely quiet, serene time. Don't you think it's fair to be able to take children to pubs?
I do agree. I think it's parental control that you should control to an extent. Let them have fun, of course, yeah. But it's like the baby on the plane, isn't it? Where the mother gives you that look, aren't they sweet? no, I've got 8 hours of this, you know, and they're willing. You go, yes, lovely, lovely, you're saying, very nice. And probably the same in the pub. They give you that aeroplane baby look. And you're going, yes, charming. Oh, let's go to another pub. But they can hear stories, swear. It's like going to a football match. If you take a young kid there, they'll hear language they probably never heard at home. Or maybe they have, I don't know.
So maybe that's the solution. If you do enough effing and jeffing at the pub, people won't bring their children. But, I mean, Claire, what do you make of this?
Well, I'm old enough to remember when you went to the pub with your parents, you sat outside with a bottle of pop and a packet of crisps because you weren't allowed inside.
Yeah, you're sitting in the car.
You were sitting in the car with the window rolled open a little bit and your parents came out to have a good check on you.
And you got to eat some pork scratchings if you're lucky.
If you were lucky.
Yeah,
that was
break
really
a tooth on them.
expensive. Yeah. But I think it is down to the way parents control their children.
Yeah.
And you get a set of entitled parents who believe that their child can do no wrong, they can leave all the rubbish on the floor for everybody else to clear up, their child can run around screaming. Well, that isn't right.
Shouldn't we be encouraging people to... We're facing a demographic cliff in the West. Shouldn't we be encouraging people to have children, though?
Why?
Because otherwise we won't have any people...
See, now I have a real issue with this, because having a child is very, very difficult. I mean, I've got a 14-year-old.
It looked pretty easy to me. I was at the birth, just pops out.
Yeah. OK, so as the only woman on the panel, doesn't work like that, sweetheart. But I think it is a very, very difficult thing to force your children onto other people. I mean, I now have a 14-year-old who can sit there and behave himself and look at his phone, and he'd probably be more help to the Home Office and TikTok finding out who was behind those, adverts. But he will sit and he will behave. But I remember when he was smaller and there was a time when he wanted to be out of a high chair or out of a pushchair and roam around the floor crawling around.
Yeah.
So I didn't go to any pubs, restaurants for about 3 years because I couldn't put that on myself, the stress on myself, but also for other people. Because if you are going out, it's expensive to eat out.
Yeah.
You don't want to ruin it for everybody, let alone yourself.
And you don't want your child eating things that they find on the floor of a Scottish pub, to be honest.
I think you should keep parents out of the pubs, because kids have enough of parents at home. Really, they have enough of their parents.
Just have empty
keep the
pubs.
parents out of the pub and let the kids run it.
It's a good... We can try that one, Mike. Anyway, moving on, we've got an ADHD charity that said that a lack of access to treatment and support from the NHS is driving people to self-medicate with cannabis. The target wait time for those wanting a diagnosis is 18 weeks, but some are left in limbo for up to 5 years. So with more ADHD sufferers turning to marijuana to manage their symptoms, is it time to legalise cannabis? Now, not to judge someone on their appearance, but Mike, you look like somebody who smoked a lot of marijuana. I mean, what do you make of this?
I've never even had a cigarette. Can you believe that? Isn't that pretty wimpy? I've never even had a cigarette. Yeah, I'm not quite sure which comes first, the syndrome or the buying the stuff, really, whether you suddenly say, if you're caught, I've got the syndrome, so it's OK. I really don't know. I know they've closed down so many marijuana plants in this country. Yeah. No pun intended. There have been a lot of them all over the country they've closed down. But I don't know. I'm not medically qualified enough to know whether it is good for you. And not a lot of people say it is. It calms you and what have you. I'm not qualified enough to say that. But if it does work for somebody, but some people are weak enough for it to lead on to something else. I can see that as well. Yeah. So there are two sides to that.
Yeah, and I mean, Lord Culver, the thing with marijuana, I was reading the article, and a man said that he'd smoked marijuana since he was 15, and it was the only thing that helped with his ADHD. I was thinking, well, maybe the marijuana is causing your ADHD. You know what I mean? It's like somebody saying, oh, drinking is the only thing that helps me get over my hangover.
And I've been drinking all my life. Yeah. Well, and also there has been a huge increase in diagnosis of ADHD. I think 400% increase since 2020. Yeah. So whether it was lockdown or whether there's other things, and if we look at how it's being diagnosed nowadays, there seems to be, shall we say, a broader approach to diagnosis. Yeah. So is there a market being created here for marijuana use as well? But I am still very much of the view, maybe a bit old-fashioned, that these drugs do lead on to other things. Yeah. And I think if we're going to use it for medical purposes, then it needs to be in a very controlled manner and prescribed in a certain way. I don't think just by saying that it helps ADHD, therefore let's open and decriminalise it. No, I'm not on that side of the argument.
Right, yeah. And Claire, I mean, we can see with some ADHD, I mean, Lord Culver mentions the huge increase in ADHD diagnoses. And I've seen this amongst my own friends. They get themselves diagnosed just to get the NHS grade speed. prescribed. So you get Adderall or Elvance or whatever, and all of a sudden you can do, you can do a tax return every day if you want.
You can do a stand-up routine in 5 minutes.
I think that we are better at recognising conditions. From years ago, I remember at school there was a child who was considered stupid, but he was actually dyslexic. And if he was diagnosed today, he would have had all the help thrown at him, not just sort of put in the corner and forgotten about. So I think that medicinal cannabis definitely has a use. It absolutely does need to be more widely available. It does help with ADHD. I have a friend with MS who finds it extremely helpful.
Yeah.
But it has to be prescribed. It has to be properly legislated. So I don't think it's as easy as saying, that's it, decriminalise cannabis and you'll solve the problem.
Get it from Barry around the corner.
Well, quite. But I think you need to look at how you're going to do it. And are you going to remove Barry from round the corner? If you put it into a more medical position, you would take out all of the impurities and you would stop the really high-strength cannabis coming through as well. So you'd then stop all of those plants being grown in somebody's...
Well, you've really thought this through. I want to buy my cannabis from you. Anyway, coming up next, the iconic Edinburgh Fringe kicked off this weekend, but is the woke agenda and attacks on free speech killing comedy? We'll find out from a comedian up at the festival. See you in 3 minutes. Don't go away.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The iconic Edinburgh Fringe Festival kicked off this weekend with both established and budding comedians flocking to Scotland's capital to showcase their laugh-inducing talents to humour-hunting spectators. Despite being a roaring success for decades, the culture of censorship, perpetual offence-taking and wokery is spreading to the world of comedy with an array of cancellations, from Little Britain to Jerry Sadowitz. It begs the question, is wokery killing comedy? I'm joined now by a comedian at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, fresh from the stage, Darius Davies. How are you, Darius? I can't hear you. Can anybody hear Darius? Oh, nobody can hear Darius. No, and that's a shame because he's got a very loud voice. Anyway, we'll get the views of my pundits while we try and sort out that technical error. Have any of you been to the Edinburgh Fringe as performers or spectators?
No, not me. I haven't. But I do enjoy watching the follow-ups on television, on social media, and there's some really, really funny comedians out there. And I hope that people don't think that by not doing jokes they're going to be popular, because I think that you need to be offended sometimes. You need to have your beliefs pushed, and comedy is brilliant at doing that, and it presents it in such a way that it's accessible to all. So long may that continue.
I want to completely
I've got to say.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Lord Culvier.
No, satire. And Claire and I, we've been in politics for a while now, and so the satire of politics is just brilliant, and we need that. We should never take that away. We should be able to examine ourselves, laugh at ourselves, be made fun of in all those kinds of ways. And comedy, good satire, really does that. And I think the Edinburgh Fringe is a microcosm of that. But it also pushes the boundaries, as Claire says. And I think people like myself haven't been, and we probably should go, because we probably end up at more political conferences than we should. So maybe we should go to the Edinburgh Fringe.
Have you ever done stand-up?
I think I'm doing it now.
I mean, Mike, you must have been like a fan of Monty Python. I mean, we've seen the power of satire to really prick the pomposity in society, and I think that's what woke culture needs. The leftist establishment needs to be mocked, but anytime a comedian mocks it, picks at anything in the ideology, they get in trouble. Anyway, we're going back to Darius. I think we've fixed those issues with his sound. Darius.
Yes, it's working now.
Yeah, it's working now. I mean, it doesn't sound amazing. It sounds like you're in a shoebox, but yeah, how's the Fringe going for you?
It's going all right. I am in a shoebox. I'm basically backstage of a comedy gig in the middle of a cave, so my natural layer, as I'm from Iran. But yeah, it's going all right.
And how do you feel that sort of woke culture is affecting comedy? I mean, we've seen like a bunch of cancellations over the last few years, not just, the old school acts like Roy Chubby Brown, but people who are actually on the left, who are part of the clan, like Jerry Sadowitz getting in trouble, and also Alfie Brown.
Yeah, I mean, look, woke people, they're definitely out to kill comedy. I actually think that you can say what you want in comedy, if you're good enough. And I think actually people on the right need to stand up for what they believe. What it can do when you boycott brands like Light and Costa, and they need to start coming out and supporting stuff they support, because we're very, people on the right are more passive, whereas people on the left will go actively try to cancel people and actively try to get people just silenced, and that's what they're doing. But
you can't say, come on, Darius, you can't say that Jerry Sadowitz isn't funny enough. I mean, Jerry Sadowitz wasn't cancelled through a lack of being funny. He's probably the funniest comedian I've ever seen. No offence.
No. Jerry Sadowitz wasn't cancelled, but Jerry Sadowitz was cancelled by a bunch of blue-haired students. What I'm saying is we need to not give power to these blue-haired students. So you and I both run a show called Hate and Live, where we hate on anything and we talk about anything. I start the show off and I say, listen, your blue hair has no power here, and I don't let them take control of the show. And I think more people on the right and more comedians need to not let them dictate who's in control. We're in control of what's funny, not a 19-year-old student checking the tickets.
Yeah, and in fact, we're seeing, certainly from my experience in comedy, just a few people complaining can destroy great things that huge audiences enjoy. I mean, Hate and Live, the show that you're running up at the Edinburgh Fringe, that's a hugely popular show, and it has it's improvised hatred. People write down what they hate, the audience write down what they hate. It goes in a bucket, and then the comedians pull it out and have to say why they hate that thing. And there's no excuses, nowhere to hide. And the audience love it. And it's just a few blue-haired students, as you say, who complain. But do you think those people are starting to lose power?
I think we're on the tidal wave is about to, it's a cup of everything's turning. People have had enough. They're fed up. They've seen that these cancellations aren't due to they're hypocritical. The left that's the problem. The left has got no principles. Everyone's seeing it for what it is. And they're saying, you know what? I know if someone's saying something, being mean about someone or making fun of them or making fun with them. And the audiences are very savvy and they've seen through it and they're bored of all these woe is me Oxford students going, oh, I'm a victim, and their parents are all millionaire benefactor trust fund kids, and then they're telling other people what they can and can't say.
Amazing.
I sound bitter, and I am.
Yeah, you do. You do sound better, but it's very entertaining. And how have sales been going for Hate and Live?
Terribly.
And do you have your own show at the Fringe as well? Do you want to plug that before we go?
Hate and Live 10:45. We're sold out tonight. I'm doing a solo run. Darius Davies, Charmingly Offensive, from the 17th to the end at the Waverley Bar. So hopefully see some of you there.
Charmingly Offensive. Charmingly Offensive sounds like it's an offensive show.
It's going to be. I say whatever I want, whenever I want. I don't care about them. I'm not trying to please the industry. I'm trying to please myself. I want people who I respect to respect me, and I don't respect them. So if you come to my show and say I'm with blue hair and you try and tell me I'm offended, I don't care because I don't respect you.
Amazing. Well, coming up in my take at 10, and thanks very much for joining us, Darius. Coming up in my take at 10, plus-size pop star Lizzo is under fire over fat-shaming allegations. But should we, in fact, be encouraging the practice? Back in just a moment after the weather. Don't go away.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name is Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a wet, windy and unsettled day across the UK, and that's been due to Storm Anthony. That's going to move away to the southeast though as we go through this evening to allow for some lighter winds to move in from the west. But we could still see a bit more in the way of cloud, rain and some thunderstorms clinging into the southeast for a while. Also some blustery conditions here. Elsewhere, things drying up, though we could still see some showers for western coasts, and there will be some clear spells around, so in rural areas temperatures might just drop into the single figures. This will mean it'll be a generally brighter, drier and calmer start to the second half of the weekend, though still some blustery conditions, cloud and rain across East Anglia at first.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. I'm Leo Kearse, and tonight I identify as Mr. Mark Dolan. In my take at 10, is plus-sized pop star Lizzo set to be cancelled? Tonight's newsmaker is the glittering Kinsey Schofield, who'll be talking all things royalty and showbiz. And GB News is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from exactly 10:30 p.m. sharp. So it's a busy hour to come, so put something cold and fizzy in the fridge or fire up the kettle and let's make a night of it. First, the headlines with Mr. Rory Smith.
Thank you very much, Leo. Storm Anthony saw 78-mile-per-hour winds hit some parts of the UK today, blocking 100 miles of railway between Exeter and Penzance. About half a month's worth of rain fell in some areas, with a number of people having been evacuated from their homes in North Yorkshire due to flooding. The southwest had severe road and rail disruption. Weather journalist Nathan Rao explains the conditions.
The wind speeds of this storm, Storm Anthony, are expected to be around 75-mile-per-hour gusts on the coasts and 55-mile-per-hour inland. It's not the strongest storm that we've seen, but because of the time of year, the trees are all in full leaf and it's holiday season, the schools are off, and where it's going to be hitting, the impact of this storm hitting today is likely to be greater than had the same sort of thing happened later in the year.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia has bombed a blood transfusion centre in the northwest of the country. Mr. Zelensky claims a number of people are dead and others are injured, but the president did not disclose how many fatalities there are. He describes the strike in the eastern Kharkiv region as a war crime. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party is calling for peaceful protests after a court sentenced him to 3 years in prison for illegally selling state gifts. This evening, several of his supporters were arrested by police during a protest. Mr. Khan was convicted of misusing his 2018 to 2022 premiership to buy and sell items that were in state possession. He has always denied any wrongdoing. 2 French police officers have been injured in clashes with migrants near Calais. Around 60 people threw rocks and other missiles as officers tried to stop people smugglers launching a small boat. GB News can reveal that 15,100 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats since the start of the year. That's down more than 2,500 on the same period last year. Members of the rock band The Kinks are paying tribute to their former keyboardist, John Gosling, who's died at the age of 75. Yeah.
Brothers Sir Ray and Dave Davies formed the band in the 1960s before Gosling joined in the 70s. The Kinks scored 3 #1 singles in the UK, including the iconic track, which you can hear now, You've Really Got Me. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now though, back to Leo.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight with me, Leo Kearse. Our newsmaker tonight is the sparkly Kinsey Schofield, bringing us the latest US, royal and showbiz news. And we've got tomorrow's papers at 10:30 p.m. sharp with full pundit reaction. Plus, we'll have tonight's headline heroes and back page zeros. Big stories, big guests and always big opinions. Here is my Take It 10. Big-boned singer Lizzo hit the headlines this week in the most bizarre Me Too scandal so far, when 3 of her dancers alleged they'd been sexually harassed, forced to work until they soiled themselves and fat-shamed. The sexual harassment allegedly involved eating a banana in an Amsterdam nightclub in a way that definitely contravened the venue's hygiene regulations. Although, it's just good to hear that Lizzo is getting some vitamins and fibre. I thought the only club she'd be interested in was a club sandwich. Lizzo described the allegations as gut-wrenching. That must have been some spanner to wrench her guts. We've actually got a picture of it. For those listening on radio, here's a picture of the biggest spanner we could find. It's Gary Lineker. I don't want to have a go at Lizzo. She's got enough on her plate. In fact, I want to applaud her for fat-shaming. Although, I have to wonder, how fat were the bodies if she was the one shaming them? We need to bring back shame. We have an increasing obesity problem in the West, particularly since lockdown, when the government, in their infinite wisdom, decided to shut the gyms and lock us in our houses right next to the fridge. Nearly 2/3 of people in the UK are overweight, and 1/4 of them are obese. Our corpulence brings a heap of health problems and costs the NHS billions. But instead of encouraging people to be healthy, society is applauding obesity. Adverts which used to present unattainable perfection and rippling hard abs are now full of fat people, and social media is full of fat activists pushing a message of fat acceptance. That's got to be a tough job, by the way, being a fat activist, because if you get too active, you might stop being so fat. They tell us that we can be healthy at any size. It might make us feel better, but it's just not true, and it's harming people. You can't identify as healthy. People need to know that obesity is unhealthy, and we shouldn't sugarcoat the message, because then they'd eat that too. People make excuses saying, oh, I have an underactive thyroid. No, love, you've got an overactive fridge door. Left-wing people say that poverty causes obesity and it's hard to eat healthily on a budget. I disagree. A can of chickpeas is cheaper than chips, and no matter what you eat, it's not going to cost more to eat a bit less of it. While it's hard to dodge the adverts from companies like Ben & Jerry's pushing their sugary junk, and Gary Lineker using his status as a trusted sports star to flog unhealthy snacks to kids, we need to have some personal responsibility. That's why it's great to hear reports that Lizzo is fat-shaming her dancers, and hopefully they'll fat-shame her back, and then next year she can embark on the Healthy BMI Tour. Please don't accuse me of fat phobia, by the way. I'm only scared of them if they're in front of me in the queue at a buffet. Anyway. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you want to see me cancelled? Email into gbviews@gbnews.com. I'll get to your emails in just a few minutes. Reacting to my Take It 10 tonight are legendary radio DJ and broadcaster Mike Reid, broadcaster and former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Culvier Ranger, and former Home Office advisor and political commentator Claire Pearsall. Coming up, we've got the papers. Oh, sorry. Claire, what do you make of that? Sorry, it's my first day doing this job. I'm still getting used to the buttons. Claire, what do you make of that? I mean, do you think we've got a problem with obesity that can be tackled with fat shaming?
I don't think you necessarily need to use fat shaming, but we need to be a lot stronger at the message that obesity is not good.
Shaming people is free, it's effective. What's not to love about it?
Well, I don't think you should do it from a point of causing alarm to everybody. I think there are ways of doing it. I think you're quite right to point out that somebody is obese. They need to do more exercise. They need to eat less. I mean, we all know that. We all know that if you sit there and go through a family bag of crisps while watching the television, it's going to do nothing for your waistline. So I do think it needs to be called out. I think there are ways of doing it. And I think that actually coming on television and talking about it, you get an awful lot of grief, but you should do it. You should be able to have an open conversation, especially with your friends and family, if they are putting on weight. And I think people shy away from it, but it isn't rocket science. We all know full well that you need to move around more. You need to eat less of those bad foods that contain sugar and carbohydrates that you're not going to use up, and you need to get outside, move around, do whatever. It doesn't have to be expensive. You can go for a walk, 20 minutes, raise that heart rate, you'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, Lord Kilvere, I mean, a lot of it is common sense. Like, if you just move more and eat fewer pies, you lose weight.
Yeah, look, I have agreed with most of what Claire said, but at one point today I think we're going to disagree, and I think it's not known by everyone. I think one of the problems we're having here is that by putting, you know, fat people up on a pedestal, we're kind of normalising fat people.
And also,
so what we're
dangerous.
saying to some people is,
if a fat person falls off a pedestal, they could take out what?
I didn't mean to do that, but you took the goal there. Look, but we're normalising it to young people that it's okay to be fat, and as we're saying, it's not okay, it's not healthy for you, it's not going to be good for you in the long run, it's not going to be good for the NHS, so we have to say that it's not good to be fat. You know, I was surprised when I saw, actually the first time I saw this was at the Glastonbury, where I was watching and saw Lizzo perform with all her dancers, who were all rather large. And I was kind of astounded because it was a very energetic performance and they had to do that. But you're thinking, you've got to be quite fit and healthy. So can you be fat, fit and healthy at the same time? And I think the answer is actually you can't. So you have to say that if you are overweight, significantly overweight, that's not a healthy thing for you and for your future health.
I mean, this is the question. Mike, moving on to you. I mean, people seem to feel that they can identify as anything these days. You know, men can identify as women, or children can identify as cats. But fat people identifying as healthy at any size, it's just medically not true. I mean, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, you lose weight in the kitchen, not in the gym, as they say. I fat shame every day. I think it's good. I look in the mirror and I go, no, 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 no. Then I go back to the fridge and it says, no, you don't. Yes, I do. Take the notice off. I do think that in shops it would be rather good to fat shame if products could identify you by your shape, from oh, okay, with the biscuits, to something really seriously fattening. You go, don't you dare touch me. So I think that would probably be quite good if we had audio reaction to size in shops. I'm sure that would work very, very well. So Mike, might not sell so many products, but hey.
Mike, do you think that shops could fat shame? Maybe the ice cream aisle could be particularly narrow, so you can only get down it if you've lost a certain amount of weight.
Yeah, what, sorry, I thought you were talking to all of us. Sorry, say it again.
Yeah, in fact, yeah. What do you think of this idea? If supermarkets restrict the aisle width for fatty foods?
Well, they've got all the notes on, haven't they? When you look at 3 or 4 reds, it's like getting a red card in football. You think, oh no, I've been sent off the pitch by this packet or something. And then you see the oranges, that's okay. The greens are okay as well. But we do tend to look more than ever, don't we, at how many calories. But you do need calories. You need fuel. You need to keep going. It's just what you eat. And sometimes it's how your body reacts to it. I know some people that eat what they like and are skinny as rakes. And other people that put on weight because they've got maybe thyroid problems or glandular problems, and they can't help it. I think you can help yourself to a certain extent. And you know, the gang here is saying, you know, we know what's sensible and what isn't. You know, but sometimes you can have a binge. That's fair.
Treat yourself. Well, it's great to hear from my panel that everybody is in complete agreement with me. We've got the poll results in. We asked you, will Trump's indictment help his run for president? 84% of you say yes, while only 16% of you say no. That is quite a dramatic result. So Trump's indictment, that you'd think would maybe scupper his chances of becoming president, could actually be helping him. Coming up, we've got the papers at 10:30 p.m. sharp with full panel reaction. But next, it's the Newsmaker with GB News favourite Kinsey Schofield talking all things Meghan and Trump. See you in a couple of minutes.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight with me, Leo Kearse. Tonight, and let's have some of your views that you've emailed in at gbviews at gbnews.uk. So Alan says, as an overweight person, I can now say that I'm over the moon that we've come back into fashion. That's great to hear, Alan. Richard says, I always draw the short straw when I get on an aeroplane. The space is limited at the best of times without a pie eater taking up 2 seats next to me. I feel your pain, Richard. Aya says, my husband fat-shamed me till I lost the weight. Best thing he could have done for my health. I was on a one-way ticket to type 2 diabetes and Lizzo was a fellow passenger. So that's the power of fat-shaming. It can save relationships and the health of an entire family. Beautiful story there. Christian says, and I swear to God I didn't write this myself, great show, Leo. I'm enjoying it with a large takeaway pizza, as is my right. Live and let live. Let people indulge. Good for you, Christian. Enjoy your pizza. Hope it's got some healthy toppings, though. Anyway, it's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, how are you?
So good to see you, and you're doing such a good job.
Thanks, Kinsey. And thanks for joining us all the way from sunny LA. It looks like you're having better weather there than we are here.
Typical Tuesday, yeah. Sorry.
Let's start with the latest on Donald Trump. Tell us everything.
Yeah, I mean, we're really seeing, I think in this particular case, he said that if you can't beat them, you got to persecute them or you got to prosecute them. So he really feels he's innocent in this particular instance. But he has pleaded not guilty to these federal charges. That he once tried to overturn the elections. And of the three criminal cases he's facing, this charge is really historic since it focuses on blocking the peaceful transfer of presidential power. The next court date is August 28th, when a tentative trial date will be set. But I will say, as an American, between some of the scandals we're seeing with the Biden family and with all of the chaos surrounding, former President Donald Trump, it's exhausting. We're not looking forward to the next election. And I think it's really disappointing to see, as I've heard some of your panelists say, that this is the best we have to offer as a country. We expect better. We expect more from our leaders. And it does seem like there's a real void when it comes to moral compasses in our politicians.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like a low point for American democracy, and such a pivotal time. And it feels like Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they're the two candidates that nobody wants. I mean, would you rather see Ron DeSantis? What do you think went wrong with Ron DeSantis' campaign?
Wow. That's a really good question, because I remember during the pandemic, Ron DeSantis was the face of, he was the maverick. We were all kind of impressed that he was making moves that no one else had the courage to make. I think where he probably went wrong was being critical of Trump. And I think that turned a lot of people off. But I'm interested in RFK Jr. I'm a pretty conservative individual, and he's a Democrat, but he comes off as a bit of a maverick as well. And during the pandemic, was banned from all of these social media sites for trying to ask some serious questions about vaccinations and the way that the country was, branding them and enforcing them. But it would be nice to see some fresh blood. It would be nice to see some new faces, because it just seems like both the Democrats with the Biden family and Trump, there's just so much drama surrounding both. It would be nice to just have somebody clean, somebody happy, a nice young family show up without skeletons in the closet. Wouldn't that just be amazing? I understand why aliens are coming, Leo. I understand why everybody's talking about aliens lately based on the politics here in the States.
And the Duchess of Woke, Meghan Markle, spent her birthday without Harry. Are there cracks appearing in this chaotic union?
Oh my gosh. Please send your thoughts and prayers. It's Page 6 that's reporting that Meghan celebrated her 42nd birthday by going to see the Barbie movie with Ellen DeGeneres' wife, Portia de Rossi, and a few girlfriends. She also stopped by a local resort in Santa Barbara for dinner and drinks, where she took photos with a bridal party. That seems very relatable and sweet and kind of fun. Not a normal Meghan story that we hear. But that's right. Prince Harry stayed at home with the kids. Then when we did see them Wednesday night, when she was kind of in that black and white dress, it seemed like Harry got in a different car. She was walking feet in front of him in the paparazzi shots. So I don't think that any of the things they've done over the last few days to try to squash those trouble in paradise, honeymoon is over rumors, I don't think anything that they've done over the last few days has settled those.
And do you think, their empire seems to be crumbling? The Spotify deal is falling apart. Apparently the Netflix deal is teetering as well, and that's the big one. That's worth $100 million. Perhaps they envisaged this launch into a glittering career in the media, but really people were just interested in that first documentary where they spilled the beans on the royal family, and after that people are a bit like, nah, there's nothing else there.
Yeah, I think that we're glued to the soap opera, right? Because I don't know of anything else that they do or anything else that they contribute. It just seems like they talk about the royal family, and that's it. But just in regards to that Spotify deal, they're on the cover of People magazine here in the States this week, and they're There's an interesting quote in there from a source close to Harry and Meghan, claiming that they were given no formal lay of the land when it came to Spotify or how a podcast works. And it says that they were already unsteady on their feet before the ink was dry. And they said that they did pitch a lot of ideas to Spotify, but there was too much red tape and Spotify wasn't moving fast enough for them, which I call garbage on, Leo. I just think that they're always blaming other people. It's just like when Meghan said nobody formally trained her into becoming, the Duchess of Sussex. No one helped her in the royal family. You got to see, when you are given an opportunity as significant as the Spotify deal, monetarily and just blessing-wise, you need to take the initiative. You need to be ambitious enough to open up a book, go Google, Wikipedia, do whatever you have to do. But you've got to stop blaming other people. And I think that that's one of the things that the American public is tired of. It's always someone else's fault.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can see how hard I'm trying with my opportunity covering for Mark, Kinsey. And just quickly before we go, the Duchesses are at war. Why is Meghan upset with Kate?
Oh my gosh, this is such a wild story. In the People magazine article, and I'll be quick, the People magazine article, they say Meghan's over it. She's, trying to be above the drama. However, in a Closer magazine article this week, they say that Meghan is really resentful of the fact that Catherine the Princess of Wales, never apologized to her. And this source says to Closer magazine that Meghan will tell anyone that will listen that the Princess of Wales had a nasty edge to her and that she feels like she should be apologized to. I'm so hostile about this story. Let go, let God. I think that the Princess of Wales is precious, sweet, sophisticated, and Meghan needs to get over it.
I couldn't agree more. Well, thanks so much, Kinsey. Thanks for joining us. And please enjoy the rest of the day there. Get some sunshine. I wish I could do the same. Coming up, we've got the papers at 10:30 p.m. sharp with full pundit reaction, plus tonight's headline heroes and back page zeros. And I want to know yours. Email gbviews@gbnews.com. See you in a moment.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name is Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a wet, windy and unsettled day across the UK, and that's been due to Storm Anthony. That's going to move away to the southeast though as we go through this evening to allow for some lighter winds to move in from the west. But we could still see a bit more in the way of cloud, rain and some thunderstorms clinging into the southeast for a while. Also some blustery conditions here. Elsewhere, things drying up, though we could still see some showers for western coasts, and there will be some clear spells around, so in rural areas temperatures might just drop into the single figures. This will mean it'll be a generally brighter, drier and calmer start to the second half of the weekend, though still some blustery conditions, cloud and rain across East Anglia at first. Cloud and showers soon bubbling up elsewhere, and they could be heavy across Scotland, northern England, and a chance of a thunderstorm for Northern Ireland, but generally feeling much more pleasant with those temperatures just creeping into the low 20s in the south. After another chilly night, though, on Sunday, it will be a bright start to the new week with plenty of sunshine around. Some showers soon starting to bubble up, but these will be less frequent and lighter in nature than what we're expecting for Sunday. But as we look towards midweek, it does look like things will settle down and become a bit drier, with those temperatures on the rise too.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10:30 p.m. This is Mark Dolan Tonight with Leo Kearse, and it's time for this. Now it's time for a look at tomorrow morning's newspapers, hot off the press. They're burning my fingers. So the Sunday Telegraph leads with China will use electric cars to spy on Britain. I think that's hacking into them, not actually driving them around. They also have drivers could claim millions in refunds after fines based on CCTV ruled illegal. Fantastic. And Dowden says that critics of migrant barges must stop howling. The Independent leads with how Tories cook the books to cut asylum numbers. 6,000 migrants disappear from asylum lists in just 3 months as Sunak boasts of cutting the backlog. But is he just fiddling with spreadsheets? The Express has sabotage. Home Secretary says Sir Keir's web of cronies are blocking asylum laws. But Labour insists it can clear a 13-year Tory backlog of deportations. And there's a lovely picture of King Charles there having a bit of whiskey, a snifter of whiskey, just like his mum and his grandma would. The Daily Mail, we're going to save that one. We're going to keep that special Brucey bonus. The Mirror has shock child hunger exposed. Jamie, act now on free school meals. 1 in 4 of 11 to 17-year-olds has a pal who skips meals, apparently. The Observer has appalling state of warehouse jails revealed in shock data. And there's a picture there of Imran Khan as well, the former Pakistan leader. And he says, when you receive this message, I will be arrested and I will be in prison. Seems to be a theme developing across the world from Navalny to Trump and now hitting Pakistan. The Sunday People has TikTok ads sell Barbie tans linked to cancer. The blockbuster is used to flog deadly nasal sprays. And the Daily Star, finally, has shiny ball of fire spotted in sky. Brits stunned by appearance of sun. And sun is in quotation marks because I don't think any of us would recognise it right now. Anyway, let's get the views of my pundits. Mike Reid, Lord Coolvere Ranger and Claire Pearsall. The front cover of the Daily Telegraph, Lord Coolvere, it's got China will use electric cars to spy on Britain. Is this a downside to the Green Revolution?
Well, yes. I think the issue here is
anything that we've now got that has got so much technology in our cars, well, they're barely cars, they're totally, almost self-driving.
Yeah.
And also, like my car, it can be updated at night, new software coming in. I've got one of those things that Elon keeps reprogramming at night, so every time I go into it the following day, the switches are all in different places. It literally does happen.
Really?
Well, they change the setup and various things can happen as you get a new software patch dropped overnight.
Because that's not really what you want when you're tanking down the motorway.
No,
you go to,
where's the brake gone?
What's behind my ear?
But the amount of data that our cars are collecting, and any kind of device, so the car's a kind of a euphemism for anything that we're going to be utilising that will give more of an insight to what we're doing, our way of living, our susceptibility, our weaknesses. That's all about data, personal data, building up a perspective on, say, Britain's or any country. And that is something that can be used against us. So we do have to be ever cautious in the world, use the advantages of new technology, but be careful at who has their hands on the data that comes from whether it's our cars or our toaster or our washing machine or anything else.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, does this worry you? Does this make you want to get back to the days of, just driving a diesel truck around?
Yeah, those days. I remember them well. Yes, it's interesting. Do they impregnate it? Do they put a chip in there? And what are they collecting? Loads of us stuck on the M25 for an hour or two. That's really going to interest the Chinese. If I were a Chinaman, I'd want to watch that all day long, like watching birds nesting in a box in your garden. What are they going to use it for? I really don't know. What data can you gather from that? I mean, it's an interesting one.
Well, if you found the car of a politician, for example, you could find out where they go, where they drop their kids off. I mean, you could get information to target them. I mean, we've seen Chinese secret police in the West target political dissidents, so they could spy on people who've left China and sought refuge in the West.
Cars are, as you rightly say, computerised now. That you can't take the engine out and put it back in anymore. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So whether they can cleverly hack into what you're doing and actually hack into individuals or individual cars, I don't know. I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it? And are we all going to do it? Do we have the same technology? Can we do it to Chinese cars?
That's the question. I'm sure our boffins in MI6 are working on that. But I mean, clearly we've seen the power that car companies have. I mean, when there was a disaster in America, Tesla downloaded an update to the cars that allowed them to have greater range. So the cheaper cars have an artificially limited range. The battery could actually take you further, but because it's the cheaper model, they limit how far it can go. And that shows, this could almost... We've had the banking scandal where you can have your bank account cut off. I mean, this could be car companies. If your values don't align with a car company, they could cut off, stop your car right where it is.
Could they cause a car crash? If they can hack in, could they cause a very eminent person's car to crash?
I mean, yeah, that's another point. Or a massive, orchestrate a massive collision.
Yeah.
But I think that's the point, isn't it? Are you suddenly going to get cancelled? Is Kia going to cancel me because it doesn't like my views on whatever it is at the time? Because they know what my social media is, because they have my bank details, because I've got it on finance, they know my address, they know my driving licence details, and I think that's the really worrying thing. Once you've got one set of data as to where you go, where you shop, what time you drop your kids off, it is quite frightening how much of that is out there that we don't really appreciate. And then you link your car up to your phone as well.
Yeah.
So doubling the exposure you've got. And who's collecting it? What are they going to do with it? So I do think it is a massive concern. And I'm sure that, as you say, the boffins at MI5 are looking, can they do it in reverse? It is all turning a little bit James Bond for my liking.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be cancelled by my car, so I really hope that they stop this.
No, and I think the personal car has always been, a symbol of personal freedom. And this is why in East Germany, under the Stasi, if you wanted a car, I mean, number one, it was a terrible car that you'd get, and some old ladder, a Trabant, and it would take 7 years to actually arrive. But you'd also be put on a list that said this person wants autonomy, this person wants control over where they go, instead of following our public bus routes.
It's always been about how much do we know about people and data, and it's always going to be the case. What we do need to do is ensure there's a balance. I've always spoken with... I've worked in this industry for the last 25 years in the IT world. The growth of technology and data, it comes together. But we have to make sure as we move into being a digital society, this will happen that we have confidence in the people who have our data, and we've also got control over what happens as we go forward. That's going to be a priority, and actually something that politicians will have to look at as we go forward.
Can we control the data? I mean, there are trillions and trillions of bits of data every day going through.
It's not about controlling the data. It'll be about what are they going to do with it, and do we have that awareness? So we need to ensure we keep the control over what companies can do with the data.
Yeah. And yeah, but I'm not sure I completely trust the government or companies to handle that data well, given what I've seen in the past. The Independent, Claire, has how Tories cook the books to cut asylum numbers. What do you make of this?
Well, the Prime Minister has pledged to stop the boats. That was one of his great pledges, and it was on a podium, and he stood there very proudly. And, of course, that hasn't really worked. As far as I can see.
Well, the numbers have gone down. We've had the report today. The numbers going
down.
Over the period of 6 months.
Yeah, do we not think that's perhaps
2,000
something to do with the weather? But I think
Isn't that what this is about? I mean, apparently they're cooking the books to cut the asylum numbers.
And I think that this is looking at how you deal with data, and it seems here the Independent has got the details that the Home Office has withdrawn 6,000 claims. They've just dropped off the books with nobody noticing and nobody telling the asylum seekers themselves.
And where are the asylum seekers?
Well, they are still going to be either housed in a hotel, or they may have come over several years ago and are still just in limbo waiting. And I think that's the real crux of the matter, is that everybody focuses on those people coming across the channel. But what about the backlog that we have, which is up in the tens of thousands?
Yep.
And they are sitting there, have been waiting 3-4 years in some instances, and now their claims could just have dropped off so that the Prime Minister can claim that this is a success and the numbers are dropping, but it isn't. And it is massaging figures. So you have to, at some point, man up and accept that you need more staff to process these claims. You have to step away from this fascination with stopping boats and actually look what you can do a little bit wider than that.
But don't we need to... I mean, Lord Kilvere, we've got an asylum system that offers refuge to people who are fleeing persecution or danger in other countries, which is great, but people are abusing that system. And we've seen this recently. There have been leaks from lawyers basically admitting that they game the system, they school, they coach cross-channel migrants in how to cheat the system and stay in the UK.
I think no system will ever be perfect. I think we have to accept that fact. And we are a country that does seek to help people, whether they're from Afghanistan, Ukraine, Syria. We will always look to be there to support the people in need. What we do need to do is make sure the process works. And I think that's where we fundamentally let down and people have concerns. We must stop the boats, because that's just terrible. We don't want to see more people drowning and dying, and kids and mothers in the channel. That's just unacceptable. Yeah. That's why the Prime Minister is committed to stopping those small boats. But the process side, yes, there has obviously been a challenge in the Home Office in how you manage this. If the numbers are going down, and obviously the Independent takes a certain bent on these stories, let's have a look at what's happening with those numbers, because I'm sure the Prime Minister will be scrutinised on this, especially in the next 6 months and the next 12 months. So if the numbers are going down, the Prime Minister will stand up and say how the numbers are going down. But I think there's a strong enough political focus on this, because we do have to do the right thing around getting this under control.
Yeah, and Mike, dovetailing into the next story on the cover of the Express, which is sabotage. The Home Secretary says Sir Keir's web of cronies are blocking asylum laws. And it does feel that the government, that Rishi, he has the best intentions to try and deal with the small boats crisis, but at every step of the way, he's being stymied by either human rights lawyers who are, helping people game the system, or NGOs, or people in his own government, or people in the Home Office, or they say Sir Keir's web of cronies.
Yeah, but I mean, losing people is not new for us. We've done it in the past. We did it, the Peasants' Revolt. About a third of the population somehow got lost. And they said, was it the 100 Years' War? No. Was it the plague? No. They just didn't count people.
Right.
So then I think William Walworth sent people out in the country and said, go and find out what's really happening. And suddenly the population exploded again overnight, hence the Peasants' Revolt. So, yeah, we've got a habit of losing people. Even back in the 1380s, we were very good just sidelining them somewhere and saying, oh, we're not as many as we thought there were in the country. So we do have a history of it. So, yeah, I mean, it's... yeah, I mean, how could you have a 13-year backlog of deportations?
Yeah.
If you take someone like the Channel Islands, like Guernsey, if you commit an atrocity on Guernsey, you're out the next day and you don't come back.
Yeah.
You're banned. You've gone, you're on the
Probably
boat.
slightly easier to manage the population on Guernsey, I should imagine. It's like Father Ted Island.
Well, we are an island. I mean, we should be able to manage it. 13-year backlog.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah, Leo, can I ask Claire to explain the Rishi's a secret Swiftie story to me? Because I know the Prime Minister doesn't drink. And when I read that, I thought it was him having a secret pint, but...
It's not.
It's not, is it?
It's not. This was... I saw it released on social media this morning that the Prime Minister ended up in a Taylor Swift-themed spin class in California.
As you do.
As you do. So he's obviously a secret Swiftie.
Right.
But I think that's going to buy him
Was
some
it taken
popularity.
by... Was Taylor Swift running the class? Because that
No,
would be
Taylor
quite-
Swift wasn't there, and I think people thought that all the Secret Service were there because Taylor Swift was going to be there, and they found out it was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Right, were they disappointed?
Just slight disappointment, yes,
Well,
not
hopefully
quite
there's no
it.
footage of Rishi in Lycra. Anyway, coming up, we've got more from the papers next. Plus, tonight's headline heroes and backpage zeros. And I want to know yours. Email gbviews@gbnews.com. See you in 3 minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Time for a couple more of your views emailed into gbviews@gbnews.com. Patrick says, if you look at the massive attendance at his rallies, it's clear there is great enthusiasm for Trump. He is being targeted by a weaponised justice system due to the political establishment's fear of his return to the White House. Interesting take, Patrick. I've got to agree with a lot of that. Trish says, see, Jamie Oliver has reared his head yet again, spouting in the mirror regarding free school meals. He must need another career now. His restaurants have all closed. Ooh, harsh. Anyway, he's just trying to do something nice, Trish. Anyway, I'm joined by legendary radio DJ and broadcaster Mike Reid, broadcaster and former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Coolvere Ranger, and former Home Office advisor and political commentator Claire Pearsall. And let's turn to our panel's headline heroes. Actually, before we do that, we're going to go over the front pages we missed. We've got the Daily Mail that has fat cats cash in on cost of living squeeze. That's a difficult headline to read, I'm not going to lie.
You did well.
Thank you.
You did well, yes. I won't try and repeat it, but allegedly... people at the top of major businesses, so the FTSE 100, their salaries are still getting bigger. And who'd have guessed, right? But there is something about performance, and I think this is where people do get annoyed. You know, we fat cats, OK, people who are heading big businesses, banks, energy firms, etc., we're expecting them to take responsibility for thousands of jobs and so on and so forth and deliver a result, but they're not delivering.
This is the thing. I mean, I don't mind people getting, CEOs and executives getting remunerated when they do well, but when they do badly, as we saw in the financial crisis, I mean, there should have been heads on stakes around the square mile. It was they destroyed people's lives, and instead they got golden payoffs while everybody else had to bail them out.
And they move around at the top. These people tend to move around from one company to another. So recently a water company was like multi-millions in debt. And yet the people at the top are still earning big money. I agree with you. I mean,
that's where
if you're doing well, then you get rewarded.
I think the real challenge right now, though, is that a lot of business and politics, especially through COVID and the banking crisis, the taxpayers had to play more of a role in a lot of businesses. And I think that's why the scrutiny is coming in on some of these salaries and to some of these individuals.
Yeah, because
of the role of the state in their business.
It's socialism. Moving on, we've got the Sunday Times, which leads with Iranian state now biggest threat to the UK. The Home Secretary's fears over spies links to gangs. So that's, Claire, what do you make of that?
I mean, it'd be quite interesting. I think we all know that there are problems in Iran, that the dissidents over there are trying to take control, and you are always going to have these gangs. I mean, it's not a stable region, so it should be no surprise. And when you destabilise places like Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, they all scatter and they all turn up in other places.
But we haven't done anything to destabilise Iran. It's doing it itself.
It is doing it itself, but you don't know what other information is available to them as to what people are in the UK that they may be interested in. It may not just be the state of the United Kingdom, it may be some individuals that are here already. So I think that there's probably a little bit more detail that we're never going to get hold of, and quite rightly so. The security services must have some of this locked away in their back pocket. So it'll be interesting to see what basis they have for this and how worried we should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, let's turn to our panel's headline heroes and back page zeros. Claire, who's your headline hero?
It's going to be the Prime Minister of Greece.
The Prime Minister of Greece?
The Prime Minister of Greece. Not only did he give an awesome interview on a morning programme quite recently, and he has offered British people who had to leave the island of Rhodes during the wildfires a 3 weeks holiday next year to make up for it.
But I mean, he doesn't have to send them very far.
Yeah, he does.
Lord Coolvere, who's your headline hero?
My headline hero is a black Labrador called Ello, who found €1 million in Florence. He's a sniffer dog. He's a sniffer dog, so he does it as his day job.
Right.
And he had a particularly good day.
Money.
Well, he can obviously the smell of money, right? Yeah, I want one of his puppies, you know, and he breeds, because wow, and not just that. It was obviously the person who had this €1 million in a case could not explain what they were doing with it, so they've been detained.
They've been
detained?
detained?
Yes.
So the government has stepped in. Some innocent man
carried on the job.
Made €1 million euros off his own hard work, and the government's taken
Didn't
it
even have the
because
lottery ticket to prove that he'd got that €1 million.
I don't like this dog. He sounds like a grass. Mike, who's your headline hero?
Sounds like the Pound Hound should be the headline, shouldn't it, really?
Yeah.
Mine are Bury Football Club. They've been going for a very long time now. They were expunged 4 years ago from the English Football League unfairly. We had two very bad owners who behaved badly. The due diligence wasn't, I think, done properly. Anyway, we've been out of the league for 4 seasons. We're now back way down the tiers, but we'll fight our way back, and we've just won our first 3 games we played in 4 years and got through our first round of the FA Cup today. So Bury Football Club at Gig Lane are my heroes this week.
Amazing. And quickly, Claire, who's your back page zero?
Sadiq Khan, London Mayor. The ongoing saga of ULEZ, and he now has the audacity to tell my fine county of Kent that it needs to create its own scrappage scheme for residents, even though he's the one making the profit out of the ULEZ.
Lord Kilveer.
Bank of England, 14th interest rate rise in a row. When they said they weren't going to do this, they wouldn't raise bank interest rates at this kind of accelerated pace. Plus, is it having the right impact on inflation? Will it have the impact on inflation? Do we actually know what their plan is for us? Come on, explain it to us. And for that, they need to go back to zero, to me. They need to find a way to say how they're going to go back to zero.
The words of a man who's got an index-linked mortgage.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine is David Lammy, who astounded the medical world this week by telling us all that you could catch asthma.
You can catch asthma?
That's what David Lammy said.
Oh, my God.
He astounded the medical world, who are now reeling at this great thought. He went on, he said, would you want your son or daughter to catch asthma in the London polluted air? Brilliant stuff. You couldn't beat that, could you, really?
And we've got viewer heroes and zeros. Tell us what you think. Email them into gbviews@gbnews.com. And thanks for watching tonight. Headliners is up after the break. I've noticed we've still got 30 seconds to go. I've come out this too soon. Let's see. Can I talk nonsense for 30 seconds? This is the real test.
You've had a fantastic show. Well done.
Yeah.
Fantastic show.
Good job,
You carried it
Rams.
off well. Mark should be worried wherever he is on holiday.
I think Mark is watching this, rubbing his hands, knowing his job is quite safe. This is a very difficult thing to do, spinning so many plates. But yeah, I mean, I hope
You do it on stage all the time.
Yeah, but Headliners is a completely different show to do. I know exactly how that works. And if you are watching, do stay tuned for Headliners. We've had a dip into the front pages, but they go deep into the front pages to talk about the stories throughout the rest of the newspaper. But thanks for listening. I'll be Luke Kears. Good night.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a wet, windy and unsettled day across the UK, and that's